Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
Good afternoon. Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
On October 8, 2020, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was faced with an unusual task. She was announcing to the public that law enforcement had busted an alleged terrorist plot, whose target was her.
When I put my hand on the Bible and took the oath of office 22 months ago, I knew this job would be hard. But I'll be honest, I never could have imagined anything like this.
The previous night, police and federal agents arrested suspects the FBI had been following for months, scooping up men across Michigan and also in Wisconsin, New Jersey, and South Carolina. According to prosecutors, most of them were associated with a group called the Wolverine Watchmen, a group that did not exist a year prior. Now, mugshots of its members were splashed on front pages across the country. This is from ABC News.
The FBI infiltrated and wiretapped one of the groups after getting a tip that the men were allegedly plotting against police and planning to attack the state capitol in an attempt to overthrow the government. With an informant listening in, they call Whitmer a tyrant. One of the suspects saying, "Snatch and grab the governor. Just grab the expletive." They allegedly wanted to take her to a secret location in Wisconsin for a trial that would end in execution.
The informant was an Army veteran. In March, he approached police about some disturbing talk in a group he had joined. Police referred him to the FBI, who sent him on an undercover descent into a vast underworld of angry armed men, talking incessantly about killing tyrants. The informant went to backwoods shooting ranges and secret meetups, where members of several militias coordinated. Through it all, he wore a recording device. As COVID-19 restrictions inflamed a sect of people that already thought the government was oppression, he recorded conversations about killing police, burning down buildings, and executing political leaders. Throughout the summer and fall of 2020, some people he had come to know focused on Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Their plans became more specific. This is ABC News again.
The mission: attack the governor before Election Day. Authorities claim the planning was months in the making, with the men even going to the governor's vacation home twice to conduct surveillance.
According to a group chat later submitted as evidence in court, militia members talked about invading Governor Whitmer's lake cottage, blowing up a bridge to delay police, and fleeing with the governor by boat. The informant provided hours of recordings and a lengthy chronicle of the encrypted group chats. The mountain of evidence was disturbing, full of threats, plans, and calls for violence. But when prosecutors laid out their whole storyline, it was clear the FBI's informant was more than just an observer. Under the Bureau's supervision, he had coordinated meetups and brought the alleged ringleaders closer to the rest of the group. At one point, he was the designated leader of the Wolverine Watchmen, and he was not the FBI's only mole in this network. The suspect's attorneys spoke of entrapment.
A rogue FBI agent, trying to line his own pockets with his own cybersecurity company and then pushing the conspiracy that just never was going to be. Our governor was never in any danger.
This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 222. A total of 14 men were arrested in the plot against Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. In federal court, 6 of them faced charges of directly planning to kidnap her. We'll get to them later. In Michigan State Court, 5 others faced charges for taking part in the reconnaissance missions to her vacation home. Let's also leave those aside for now. Let's start with the 3 founding members of the Wolverine Watchmen: Joseph Morrison, Pete Musico, and Paul Ballar. Attorneys would argue bitterly about whether or not the crime started with them, but the story of the Wolverine Watchmen certainly does. Joseph Morrison, who was 26 in 2020, went by the online alias Boogaloo Bunyan. He also used it as a militia code name. Boogaloo, according to dictionary.com, refers to a loosely organized extremist movement that supports a Second American Civil War, which they also referred to as a boogaloo. Bunyan may have been a reference to his reddish-brown beard, like that of Paul Bunyan. But that's where the resemblance to the giant ended. Morrison is thin and wispy with small eyes. According to a deep dive into his life written for the news website Deadline Detroit, Morrison was born with signs of fetal alcohol syndrome, and he lived with various relatives throughout his youth. He dropped out of Western Michigan University and joined the Marine Corps Reserves. When not called up to various bases for the reserves, he worked low-wage jobs, often on farms. Morrison did get one lucky break. An aunt left him enough money in her will to buy a house on an acre of property in Munith, a town in lower central Michigan so small it doesn't even have a single traffic light. There, he made a home for an extended family. He lived with his wife and their 2-year-old daughter, along with his wife's parents, Crystal and Pete Musico. The Musico's other daughter occupied a trailer on the property, along with her husband and child. Musico was 42 and went by the codename Grandpa. His fellow watchmen also sometimes called him Crazy Pete.
The government is starting to overreach. It's time for people to start stepping up and stepping back against the system, against the people in government, not the people that are standing beside them on the streets. It's time to go after the government for its overreach.
Musico uploaded anti-government rants to his YouTube channel. Most of his videos have disappeared from the site. Another YouTuber saved this one.
Driving a car. It should be illegal for them to make a law to protect you for your own safety in your vehicle. You paid for that vehicle. Whose right is it to tell you to wear a seatbelt? I mean, seriously. Whose right is it to tell you to wear a seatbelt for your safety in your vehicle? What sense does it make to be told to be safe, to be forced to be safe, to be ticketed if you do not wear a seatbelt in your car that you paid for, that you paid the taxes on?
Musico seemed to have a particular dislike for law enforcement.
What happened to the police departments to protect and serve? I watch too many cop cars fly by people that are broke down on the side of the road. That is not protecting and serving. It looks to me like the police departments have gone to harassing and collecting.
According to FBI agents, Musico was a heavy cannabis user and told tall tales about tracking down cops to their homes and throwing Molotov cocktails through their windows. These were almost definitely untrue, but in the FBI's recordings, he talks often about tracking down police and politicians to their homes. In one, he appears to say, "Just because I'm a church director, don't think I won't shed blood in the name of liberty and defense." In November of 2019, Musico urged his son-in-law, Joseph Morrison, to create a Facebook group to attract other self-described patriots in the area. "Patriots' time is fleeting," Morrison wrote. "If we do not act soon, our rights shall perish." His own disgruntlement may have been renewed by a recent conviction on a misdemeanor gun charge. One of his first recruits was Paul Bellar, age 21. His codename was Doc because he had EMT training. According to court documents, Bellar wanted to be an Army medic, but he was discharged during basic training and diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. He worked as a safety officer at a gun range and lived in a mobile home park, which he patrolled, rifle in hand, according to his neighbors. Here's one of his neighbors speaking to a Detroit news station.
He was walking around with a backpack and rifles in his hands, just holding them, saying, "I'm protecting our neighborhood."
But neighbors also said that Bellar started disputes, getting into shouting matches and making threats. The militia movement began in the late 1980s and threaded together ideas like end times paranoia, backwoods survivalism, absolute libertarianism, a come-and-take-it attitude on gun rights, fascination with trappings of the military, and echoes of the John Birch Society's claims about communist conspiracies. Armed groups organized under the belief that the U.S. government, or the United Nations, or some shadowy New World Order cabal, was about to usher in an age of tyranny. The enemy was often ill-defined, but the storyline was always the same, that they were evil, had infiltrated the halls of power, and had created a justification to train to use violence. Michigan, in particular, has reportedly always been an epicenter of militia activity. In the Southern Poverty Law Center's annual reports on anti-government militias, the state is usually second only to Texas in the number of groups identified, and Texas has 3 times Michigan's population. According to data from the Southern Poverty Law Center, the militia movement of the 1990s peaked in 1996 with 858 groups nationwide. Then it almost died out. The Oklahoma City bombing, the Unabomber, and 9/11 all seemed to chip away at the idea that training for guerrilla warfare against the feds was patriotic. In 2002, the same law center counted just 143 groups. Militias made a huge resurgence, however, after the 2008 financial collapse and the election of President Barack Obama. In 2012, the Southern Poverty Law Center counted a record 1,360 militia-type groups. A few weeks after starting the Wolverine Watchman Facebook group, Joseph Morrison and his father-in-law, Pete Musico, were amassing weekend crowds of a dozen or so armed men in tactical gear on their property. The yard was cluttered with car tires and plywood, parts used as a makeshift shooting range and obstacle course. A Confederate battle flag hung next to a Revolution-era American flag. The sound of gunfire rang through the air.
Beautiful country out here, and then all of a sudden, out of the peace and quiet, bam, 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 for hours.
This is a neighbor speaking to Detroit's WDIV newscast.
I was going to confront him a couple times. My husband said, no, don't. That's why people move to the country, yada, yada. And I thought, well, in the times we've got with the gun rights and so on, I better not say anything.
Dan Chappell, then 33 years old, found the group on Facebook. He was an Iraq war veteran, a former fire support specialist. He went past the front lines to gather intelligence for bomb strikes. It was dangerous work, and a combat injury left him with brain trauma and a titanium shin bone. He worked in the back of a post office, but he still wanted to keep up his combat skills. The Watchmen seemed like a group that did Army-style training. He asked to join. Chappell would later testify that he was shocked by what he saw. Members of the group smoked joints while handling assault rifles. He recounted an incident in which he suggested they move further into the woods to avoid someone calling the police. A militia member responded that if the cops showed up, they would use them as target practice piglets. On the encrypted group chat, beneath a barrage of Second Amendment memes, he saw a post from Pete Musico that asked about repurposing a hunting app to track police officers to their homes. Chappell went to a friend in the Flint Police Department who connected him to the FBI, which recruited him as a source. Though only a small percentage of veterans join militias, they're not uncommon in their ranks. Militias actively recruit them because of their combat skills. This seemed to be what Chappell, known as Big Dan to the Watchmen, was providing. Joseph Morrison, who had appointed himself commanding officer, promoted Chappell to executive officer, his second in command, on account of his combat skills and age. Chappell began training the group in techniques he had learned in Iraq, showing them how to systematically clear out the rooms in a building or trap a target as they fled through an exit. In truth, the FBI told Chappell to take charge of the trainings. They were worried that an injury on the Munith property would lead to a 911 call, which might then lead to a shootout. When they weren't practicing battle tactics or shooting at tire stacks, the newly formed militia sat around and talked. Chappell wore a wire through it all. Musico and his wife talked about the second coming of Christ. That was coming soon. So was the Boogaloo. Recordings seemed to catch Musico talking about instigating a fight with a police officer in an attempt to instigate the Boog. This was March of 2020. Also happening that month.
We must work together to bend the curve. We must do more to curtail community spread so our health system has a fighting chance. Today I'm issuing a stay home, stay safe executive order for all Michiganders, and it goes into effect just after midnight tonight.
Like the governors of a large majority of states at the time, Governor Whitmer closed non-essential businesses and issued a stay-at-home order due to the spread of COVID-19. 6 days later, the Wolverine Watchmen met at the Munith property. They were livid. According to recordings, Musico talked about making a citizen's arrest of Governor Whitmer. Weeks after this, he allegedly asked about finding her address. Their encrypted group chat, later submitted as evidence in court, was filled with anti-Whitmer memes. Bellar wrote, "She needs to be dragged in the street and hung."
Treason! 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 Treason!
On April 30th, 2020, protesters descended on the Michigan State Capitol building in Lansing, while lawmakers debated extending Governor Whitmer's emergency order. Many wore tactical vests and carried assault rifles. They flooded into the building and went to the doors of the chamber where legislatures were meeting. There stood a line of outnumbered, unarmored police officers.
Let us sing! Let us sing! Let us sing! Let us sing! Let us sing!
Anti-lockdown protests were happening across the country, but this one was shocking for its brazenness. An armed mob flouted COVID restrictions, sought to disrupt a government proceeding, and taunted police. Several lawmakers said they feared for their lives. In the crowd were the Wolverine Watchmen, Pete Musico, Joseph Morrison, Dan Chappell, and Paul Bellar. This audio, recorded in a video by news website MLive, captures Musico yelling at police.
Thought you were getting respectable positions and realized nobody respects you. Nobody respects anything you guys do. You guys are not first responders.
You thought you were getting respectful positions, he says, and you realize nobody respects you. Nobody respects anything you guys do. You guys are not first responders. The crowd eventually dispersed through the building. A Reuters photographer took a photo that shows the Wolverine Watchmen standing in a hallway. Their faces are concealed by scarves and masks. Their chests are padded with loaded tactical vests. They hold their rifles pointed at the ground, as Army infantry are trained to do when there's no immediate threat. That day, according to Chappell, the Watchmen made a few sloppy, half-hearted attempts to find Governor Whitmer. He said that Musico looked at the exterior of the building, trying to spot emergency exits she might use to flee, and they banged on the door of an office they thought belonged to her. In the weeks after the protest in Lansing, Musico, Morrison, and Bellar all stepped back from the group. Bilar had lost months of work because of the pandemic closure. He bought more guns and ammo on credit, but stopped paying rent on his trailer. Facing eviction, he left Michigan to move in with his father in South Carolina. Morrison announced he was taking a hiatus to deal with marital problems. Musico wanted to step away and be the face of the group at public protests. And so Dan Chappell was left as the de facto leader of the Wolverine Watchmen, an odd position for an FBI informant. The Bureau then seized an opportunity to expand the militia movement beyond this group. According to court testimony, days after the demonstration at the Michigan State Capitol, Joseph Morrison received an invitation to a meetup organized by a Wisconsin chapter of the 3 Percenters, one of the largest new militia networks. It was set for June 6th at a budget hotel near the highway in a suburb of Columbus. From the Watchmen, only Dan Chappell attended. He wore a recording device. When he arrived, he was handed a list of code words. Bonfire meant militia training. S'mores meant guns or ammo. Can opener meant a fully automatic weapon. Tick meant police officer or federal agent. The list instructed the reader to burn it after memorizing it. Most of the deliberations were pretty tame, at least the daytime meetings among the whole group. According to Chappell's notes, attendees talked about starting a charter school that would teach children 3 Percenter values. A gun industry lobbyist spoke about rehabilitating the image of militia groups. Chappell said he later encountered a man raving about how he wanted to grab a state governor. He had a gray beard and wore a tricorn hat, modeled after the kind that Revolutionary War figures wore in paintings. He said he would blow up inhabited houses to create a distraction in order to then capture a governor as a hostage. He suggested Virginia's Ralph Northam. The man was recorded saying, "I'm going to do some of the most nasty, disgusting things that you have ever read about in the history of your life." The man was Barry Croft, a 44-year-old truck driver who was active in the 3% movement. The hat was a trademark of his. Like some people in the militia movement, Croft thought the United States had drifted away from its constitutional boundaries. Here he is on YouTube in 2020.
There was a very crisp place where the decision-making started to take a turn, which was contrary to Constitution. And one of the ugliest realities is West Virginia. By federal line and federal dictate, a new line was created to favor the people that backed the political sentiment of the North. So they stole territories from Virginia without the consent of the legislature, and they actually formed a boundary around their unconstitutional act. That was the first trespass that I found of the Constitution, and I said, well, darn.
In recordings collected by the FBI, Croft displayed a different persona among his fellow militia members. At the Ohio meeting, he can be heard saying, "I want to hurt people. I want to burn houses down and blow things up. Burn a family to the ground. I'm going to do it. Murder and killing. I might murder a cop, put his uniform on and murder feds. I'm not being hypothetical." According to news reports, Croft had a rap sheet that included convictions for burglary, theft, and assault, all from the mid-1990s. He had spent 3 years in prison. By 2020, he seemed to be on the straight and narrow, raising 3 daughters in his home in Delaware. But the FBI would document him talking about tyrants and making threats. Also in Ohio, Chappell met 37-year-old Adam Fox, also from Michigan. Fox had been at the April rally at the state capitol. In news photos, he's at the front lines, facing the line of police. A frequent gym goer until COVID, Fox was 6'2", with a barrel of a chest, thick arms, and a full beard. He often wore a Hawaiian shirt, a fashion item reportedly commonly worn in the Boogaloo movement. Chappell and Fox exchanged contact information. These two men, Barry Croft and Adam Fox, were later accused of being the ringleaders in the plot against Governor Whitmer. They were among 6 charged in federal court for conspiracy to kidnap and other serious crimes. As Joseph Morrison, Pete Musico, and Paul Billar decreased their involvement, Adam Fox and Barry Croft moved into Chappell's orbit. At the time he met Chappell, Fox was living in the windowless basement of a vacuum supply shop outside Grand Rapids, sleeping next to old hoses and motor parts. The owner was the father of a high school friend and remembered Fox as a sad trailer park kid whose own father was absent. He also hired him for work when he had some to offer. According to an investigation in the Detroit Free Press, Fox was a trade school dropout who spent most of his life drifting with few close relationships and no consistent job. He was married for 6 months in 2014 and 2015. The divorce settlement specified Fox would leave with a bed, 3 TVs, some dishes, a weed whacker, a 2007 Chevy Impala, $1,000 in cash, and custody of 1 cat and 1 dog. He moved in with his grandparents. Fox, who had never gone hunting before, suddenly became fascinated by guns and militias. He had reportedly been kicked out of one, the Michigan Home Guard, for anger issues, including feuding with other members online. His grandfather was disturbed by his growing arsenal of guns, leading him to move into the vacuum repair shop. There, he lived with his pet dogs and took refuge in cannabis. On June 14th, Chappell phoned Fox. He was sitting in the FBI's office in Flint, and the call was recorded. Chappell asked Fox what his mission was. Fox allegedly said he wanted to storm the state capitol. Recordings seemed to capture him saying, "We take the building and then take fucking hostages. It's fucking wartime." According to the FBI, he said he wanted to have the governor hog-tied down on a table for public display. He compared the idea to the way DEA agents spread drugs, money, and guns across a table for the media after a big bust. Chappell invited Fox to trainings at the Munith property and tried to integrate him into the group. Several original members told Chappell they thought Fox was deranged with his talk of storming the state capitol. In a June 28th exchange, captured on Chappell's recording device, Pete Musico seems to cut off Fox and go back to his original idea, tracking down police and politicians to their homes. Musico told the group that it assembled that anyone uncomfortable with the idea of kidnappings should leave. Fox is then heard asking, "Who's down for kidnapping tyrants?" That was from footage taken at an intermilitia training session that took place in Cambria, Wisconsin, on July 10, 2020, organized by the Wisconsin 3%ers. Barry Croft can be seen shooting an assault rifle from behind an oil barrel, wearing his tricorn hat. At Croft's invitation, Chappell and Fox attended this event, with some of the regulars at the Wolverine Watchman compound. The rented SUV that Chappell drove was paid for by the FBI, as were the 6,000 rounds of ammunition loaded in the back. In the SUV were 4 men who, 3 months later, would be charged with Croft and Fox for conspiracy to kidnap Governor Whitmer. Ty Garbin was 24 and worked as an aircraft mechanic. He went by the code name Gunny because his gun collection was extensive. Caleb Franks was 26 and codenamed Red Hot. He was a reported former heroin addict working as a peer counselor. He later told a courtroom he was depressed and stayed in the militia out of a death wish. Daniel Harris, age 23 and codenamed Beaker, was a former Marine Corps rifleman who worked as a security guard. Brandon Caserta, 32, was a tattooed heavy metal fanatic whose social media account got darker and more conspiratorial during the pandemic. Some of his posts have also been saved.
Trump is not your friend, dude. And it amazes me that people actually believe that when he's shown over and over and over again that he's a tyrant. Every single person that works for government is your enemy, dude.
According to documentation from Chappell's notes and recording device, Croft and the Michigan group met up to build improvised explosives. They used balloons filled with gunpowder and BBs as scrap metal and set them next to mannequins. They failed to detonate. The Watchmen met with Croft for dinner and had a conversation about kicking off the Boog. Croft reportedly returned to his idea of kidnapping a governor. Afterwards, Fox became focused on Governor Whitmer, according to Chappell. The two sometimes sat around the vacuum shop, having long, rambling conversations while smoking marijuana. But after the July militia training, he said Fox was unusually single-minded about Governor Whitmer. On August 9th, after a training exercise at Joseph Morrison's property, Fox allegedly presented the idea to the group. "Who's down for kidnapping her?" he asked. Several people were reportedly uncomfortable. "Why do that?" they asked. "How would you even pull it off?" But Chappell, Fox, and the four who would later be charged as Fox's co-conspirators were forming a unit of their own. According to the FBI, on August 23rd, they met up and passed around each other's identification, a trust exercise to prove no one was an undercover cop. On that day, Ty Garbin created a new encrypted group chat just for them. Less than a week later, Fox and Chappell led the first trip to the Traverse City area to find a 3-bedroom cottage on Elk Lake that was owned by the family of Governor Whitmer. Governor Whitmer had worked her way up the ranks in the state Senate, where she became minority leader. She ran for governor in 2018 using an often repeated campaign promise to fix the damn roads. She won by almost 10 points. As a governor elected by a large margin in a state won by Donald Trump in 2016, Governor Whitmer instantly became a rising star in the Democratic Party. She was reportedly on Joe Biden's short list of possible vice presidential candidates. During one of the most frantic days of the pandemic, she wound up in a public spat with Donald Trump over the federal response. Here she is on CNN.
We need tests. We need personal protection equipment. We need resources. We need regular, sustained, national strategic plan here and solid, clear communication. And I think these are all the important pieces that are missing from the federal government that we governors are trying to step up and meet that need.
President Trump then spoke about her in an interview on Fox News, calling her a woman governor from Michigan. At a White House press briefing, he said he had told his administration not to call the woman in Michigan about federal help because she wasn't appreciative. On April 17th, he tweeted, "Liberate Michigan," and followed it with similar tweets about Minnesota and Virginia, all states with Democratic governors. With the 2020 election approaching and pandemic frustration mounting, some feared that the governors had targets on their backs. This fear seemed to be validated by the April armed protest of the Michigan state capitol. On August 29th, Chappell and Fox drove across the state to Elk Lake. They were accompanied by 2 minor members of the Wolverine Watchmen, Sean Fix and Eric Molitor. They found Governor Whitmer's house using information available online. According to the FBI's case, they took photos and videos. Fox hand-drew a map. They shared their intel on their group chat, which Chappell later submitted as evidence. For a planning session for a guerrilla mission, the group chat was oddly group chattish. "Got eyes emoji on house emoji," Chappell wrote. Ty Garbin responded with a gif of Borat and his catchphrase, "Very nice." Can scissor emoji police car emoji at bridge emoji, Garbin wrote. If the bridge emoji go finger pointing down emoji, it also red X emoji, the water emoji. He seemed to be saying that they could blow up a bridge over the Elk River to cut off a police response. This became the linchpin of the Watchmen's planning. As the police were stopped at the collapsed bridge, they would invade by boat, fight off the governor's security detail, and kidnap her, traveling on the Elk River to Lake Michigan. Opinions differed as to what to do next. According to communications gathered by the FBI, Fox suggested they disable the boat's motor, hop onto another boat, and abandon her. Others proposed taking her to a spot in Wisconsin for a citizen's trial. On September 12th, Fox and Chappell took part in a second, larger reconnaissance trip to Elk Lake. 3 cars carried all of the people who had some part in the mission. There was Ty Garbin, Caleb Franks, and Daniel Harris, 3 of the 4 Wolverine watchmen who would later be charged with Fox and Croft for conspiracy to kidnap, plus 2 new members known as Mark and Red. Croft traveled there and had a crew of people with apparent militia ties. This is what happened next, according to prosecutors. As one car drove around, keeping a lookout for law enforcement, the others surveyed the area. They visited a boat launch and tried out some night vision goggles. They tried to determine how visible activity in the water would be from the shore, and vice versa. One reason so many people took part in this operation is that the FBI encouraged its informants to invite a lot of people. Agents listed specific watchmen they wanted Chappell to take to the lake. Croft also had an FBI mole in his camp, Stephen Robeson, the supposed founder of the Wisconsin 3%ers. Robeson, then 57, was a concrete and asphalt contractor living in central Wisconsin. But since the 1980s, he had also been a frequent FBI informant. His burly frame and scraggly chin beard gave him the look of a biker. Plus, a youthful criminal record, including felonies, lent him credibility in outlaw circles. Some people who he helped put away called him a professional snitch. For his help in this case, he was paid almost $20,000. Robeson also encouraged Croft to recruit people to the lake trips and to other militia activities. The 2 new members Chappell had brought along, Mark and Red, were also undercover FBI agents. Red told the group that for $4,000, he could acquire enough C4 to blow up the bridge. The watchmen returned to southern Michigan. It would take a while to come up with the money. In the meantime, Chappell told the group that Red had some spare gear, including medical kits and bulletproof vests. This was an opportunity to give him some cash for equipment to show good faith, as he procured the explosives. On October 7th, 2020, Chappell picked up Adam Fox, Ty Garbin, Caleb Franks, and Daniel Harris to drive to a warehouse where he said that Red was waiting. After Chappell parked, the car was surrounded by members of the FBI's hostage rescue team. As the FBI was moving in on the group, Michigan State Police raided Joseph Morrison's property in Munith and arrested both him and Pete Musico. Paul Billar was arrested in South Carolina. Barry Croft stopped at a highway convenience store in New Jersey. When he walked back to his truck, FBI agents were waiting for him. Morrison, Musico, and Billar were charged in state court with giving material support to a terrorist act, gang membership, and various firearm charges. 5 men who went on reconnaissance missions to Elk Lake also faced state charges for giving material support to terrorism. Most of those cases are still pending. 6 people faced charges in federal court for conspiracy to kidnap: Barry Croft and 5 Wolverine Watchman associates, Adam Fox, Ty Garbin, Caleb Franks, Daniel Harris, and Brandon Caserta. Prosecutors later added new charges against Fox, Croft, and Harris: conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction because of the explosives they allegedly ordered from the undercover agent. In January of 2021, Ty Garbin, who was caught on the group chat contributing ideas of blowing up the bridge and painting a boat black, pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against the other 5. In December, as a jury trial neared, their attorneys filed a motion asking the judge to dismiss the case because of entrapment. They argued that, quote, the government initiated this case, despite the fact that it knew there was no plan to kidnap, no operational plan, and no details about how a kidnapping would occur or what would happen afterward. Guidelines around entrapment had been established in a 1992 Supreme Court case, Jacobson v. United States. In that case, the U.S. Postal Service sent mailers from a fictional publisher of child sex abuse materials to people they thought might order it. The Supreme Court ruled that, quote, government agents may not originate a criminal design, implant in an innocent person's mind the disposition to commit a criminal act, and then induce the commission of the crime so that the government may prosecute. A judge did not think that this case met that standard, ruling that FBI agents had not induced them to commit the crime. Judge Robert J. Jonker also refused to allow the defense to bring up some issues with the FBI agents who oversaw the case. One had opened a security firm, and attorneys argued that he needed a high-profile case like this to drum up business. With those options exhausted, another defendant, Caleb Franks, took a plea deal. The FBI had kept track of the suspect's group chats and social media accounts. As evidence, this took the form of hundreds of thousands of printed pages. They also collected thousands of hours of recordings from Chappell and the informants that had separately been following Croft. Prosecutors had Croft on tape, saying he had permission from God to kill, and videos of him making explosives. They had a video Fox had uploaded to Facebook, in which he holds an assault rifle in each hand and says, "We have the numbers, we have the arms." They had a group chat in which Harris suggested someone pose as a pizza delivery man and shoot Governor Whitmer. They had a video message in which Brandon Caserta instructed the others that if they encounter police during the Elk Lake trip, they should give them one opportunity to leave and then kill them. During the trial, defense attorneys didn't argue that their clients didn't make those statements. They argued that they had no serious intent. The FBI knew this was stoned crazy talk. Joshua Blanchard, Croft's attorney, told the jury. He pointed out that they also talked about tying Governor Whitmer to a kite and flying her over the lake. He said they also referenced hiding in the woods and barking to get her to come out of her house. They also accused the FBI of goading their clients. Fox's attorney depicted him as lonely and vulnerable. Adam Fox wanted to please, Christopher Gibbons argued. He was looking for connections. The FBI took advantage of that. That's unacceptable in America. That's not how it works. We don't make terrorists so we can arrest them. Daniel Harris even took the stand and casually admitted to making violent comments. This is WDIV's Nick Monticelli reporting from a court hearing.
Federal prosecutors then revealed an encrypted group chat with other members of the Wolverine Watchmen. The prosecutor, you suggested ways of killing her. Yep. Doming her, coming to work, meaning shoot her in her head, correct? Pose as a pizza person and kill her at her home with 3 rounds? Yep. Harris argued he shared those violent ideas because he was tired of the group constantly messaging about kidnapping the governor, but he says he was 100% against the plan. He called alleged ringleader Barry Croft a stoned, whacked-out pirate.
Harris also called Chappell a bitch for his concern about violent memes. You went to Iraq, came out hurt, but words hurt you, words scare you, he said. When Chappell testified, defense attorneys grilled him about his compensation from the FBI, which was more than $50,000 in cash, plus reimbursement of expenses. Chappell said he didn't do it for the pay. I never expected anything, he said. I wanted to stop people from doing bad things to good people. On April 8th, 2022, the jury reached a decision. Kind of. This is Adriana Diaz on CBS News.
Now, on all of those counts, 2 of the men were found not guilty. So that's where the jury agreed that 2 of these men were not guilty. The other 2 men, their names are Adam Fox and Barry Croft. They were the 2 men that prosecutors said were really the ringleaders here. The jury was stuck. They were deadlocked on all the charges against both of these 2 men. So what does this mean? The 2 that were found not guilty, they can walk free. The other 2, now it's in the hands of the prosecutors, and, they have to decide and talk to the judge to see whether or not they're going to try to ask for a retrial on the counts that the jury was not able to come to a unanimous conclusion on.
Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta were free. Here's Caserta speaking to Detroit's Local 4 newscast.
People say things that are offensive and, may sound violent, but there's a difference between actually physically doing violence or just being around a group of people and talking crap, and if the government wasn't involved in this situation, it would have never gotten to where it is now.
The government did retry Adam Fox and Barry Croft. And on August 23rd, 2022, after deliberating just 7 hours, the jury came back with a decision. This time, they were guilty on all counts. Both were convicted of conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction for the bomb. They have yet to be sentenced. The original 3 watchmen went on trial in October of 2022. The state argued that they had continued to provide support, most critically the use of the Munith property, to the others after they knew they were bent on political violence. This is the Assistant Attorney General at the preliminary hearing.
The 3 individuals that we have in the courtroom were committed to political violence. Even though they didn't do it themselves, they provided material support and resources to others, intending those resources to be used in others' plans. And so they provided training while possessing firearms, personnel, and expertise, and their gang, not a typical gang like we would think of the Bloods and the Crips, but their gang, the Wolverine Watchmen, provided the means for it.
The defense argued that the others acted on their own accord, coming to the group already primed for political violence. This is Muziko's attorney, Kareem Johnson.
Did Mr. Muziko's membership of the gang, provide any motive, means, or opportunity for anybody in that gang to commit a felony? No. Everybody already had their political beliefs, their social beliefs, their beliefs about guns before they joined this group. This is not a situation where a Blood shoots a Crip that he doesn't even know merely because he's a Crip and I'm a Blood. Everybody already owned their own rifles. Everybody already owned their own ammunition. There was nothing that the Wolverine Watchmen provided by way of motive, means, or opportunity to anybody else.
He also noted that the 3 founding members never took any action, and that's the important thing. An attorney for Morrison said, "It's not a crime to be dangerous." On October 22nd, 2022, the jury found all 3 men guilty of the 3 of the crimes with which they were charged. They have yet to be sentenced, but may face up to 20 years in prison. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. You can let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram at Court Junkie, by tweeting us at CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing us at podcast@courtjunkie.com. This episode was researched by Nicole Gusmerotti and written by Nick Keppler and Matt Stroud. If you'd like to hear these episodes without the ads, hear additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, and receive our weekly newsletter covering the most fascinating court cases of the week, please check out our Patreon options at courtjunkie.com/support. And please make sure to check out Court Junkie's sister podcast, Civil, which covers civil cases and trials. Search for Civil Court Junkie wherever you listen to podcasts. And finally, Court Junkie will be taking a break for the holidays and will be returning with a brand new episode on January 9th. Hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. Thanks, as always, for listening. Until next time.